The air in the lower sectors of Station 42 tasted like recycled ozone, burnt circuitry, and cheap, frying protein. It was a sensory assault, a crushing weight of noise and light that pressed in from every side. Above, the jagged ceiling of the hollowed-out asteroid was lost behind a haze of industrial smog and flickering holographic advertisements that sold everything from synthetic organs to memory wipes. Rian Cole moved through the crush of bodies with the practiced ease of a man who had spent too many years in places exactly like this. He was tall, mid-30s, with a face that might have been handsome if it were not perpetually set in a grimace of cynicism. A jagged scar ran from his temple to his jaw, a souvenir from a fuel line explosion that he usually told people was a knife fight because it sounded better. He wore a heavy flight jacket that had seen better decades, the leather scuffed and stained with engine grease. Beside him walked Jax, a mechanic whose height and width were nearly identical, creating a walking blockade that parted the sea of vendors and drifters. This place was a sewer, Rian thought, a neon-soaked, gravity-plated sewer floating on the edge of the lawless fringe. "You barely got paid enough for the run," Jack said, his voice booming over the shriek of a passing cargo hauler. Ryan checked the credit chit in his pocket, running his thumb over the plastic ridges. It was light. Too light. "It covers fuel and the docking fees," Ryan replied, his voice rough. "If I do not eat for the next 3 weeks and maybe sell a kidney, I might break even," Jack snorted. "With the amount of cheap whiskey you filter through that kidney, you would have to pay someone to take it." They passed a stall selling questionable cybernetics. A patrol drone hovered overhead, its single red eye scanning the crowd. It paused over a vendor selling distinctively military-grade blasters, processed the bribe that had been digitally beamed to its subroutine, and drifted away, pretending it had seen nothing. "That is the beauty of the fringe," Rian muttered. "Justice is just another commodity with a fluctuating exchange rate." He was tired. The last job had been a dubious smuggling run. Medical supplies that were technically contraband only because they avoided the corporate tariffs. It was non-lethal, moral enough to let him sleep at night, but risky enough to keep his blood pressure spiked. He just wanted to get back to his ship, the Wayfarer, and sleep for 12 hours. A sudden roar from the crowd ahead broke his train of thought. It was not the usual angry shout of a deal gone wrong. This was a collective gasp, followed by a low, thrumming murmur of excitement and greed. The sound pulled at Ryan, a magnetic force of curiosity he knew he should resist but never could. "Do not do it," Jax warned, seeing the shift in Ryan's stride. "We need to fuel up and leave." "Just a look," Rian said, veering toward the noise. They pushed through a wall of spectators, reptilian dockworkers, human spacers, and hooded figures that could have been anything in between. The crowd was gathered around a raised circular platform in the center of a wide plaza. High-intensity spotlights cut through the gloom, focusing on a central point. It was an auction block. The auctioneer was a squat, four-armed sentient with oily skin and a voice amplified to boom across the sector. He paced the stage, gesturing with theatrical flair. "And now, for the main event of the evening," the auctioneer bellowed. "We have something rare, something dangerous, a prize for the connoisseur of the exotic." A heavy blast shield retracted from the center of the stage, and a gravity cage rose into the light. Rian felt the air leave his lungs. Suspended in the center of the shimmering blue grav field was a woman. She was tall and willow-thin, with skin the color of pale twilight violet. She wore only simple, ragged scraps of gray fabric, leaving enough skin exposed to show the intricate, luminous patterns that pulsed faintly beneath her dermis. They looked like constellations trapped under flesh, glowing with a soft, rhythmic blue light. Her hair was dark, cascading around her shoulders in a zero-gravity halo within the field. But it was her eyes that held Ryan frozen. They were silver, bright as polished chrome, with starburst pupils that seemed to fracture the light. She hung there, suspended a foot off the deck, her wrists bound by energy cuffs. She did not look terrified. She did not weep. She looked out at the leering crowd with an eerie, terrifying calmness, her posture regal despite the cage. "By the void," Jax whispered, grabbing Rian's arm. "Is that a Larathi?" Rian stared. He had heard the stories. Everyone had. The Larathi were the boogeymen of the outer systems, or the victims, depending on who you asked. "She is," Rian said, his voice tight. The crowd pressed in, a mix of fear and fascination rippling through them. "Gentlemen and sentient beings," the auctioneer crooned, slapping one of his hands against the containment field. "A pure-blooded Larathi female, unbroken, untouched. We all know the rumors, do we not? The psychic potential, the heightened sensory empathy. They say a bond with one of them is like a drug you never come down from." The woman in the cage did not flinch at the impact on the field. She slowly turned her head, scanning the faces in the crowd. When her gaze swept over Ryan, he felt a phantom sensation, like a static charge brushing against the back of his neck. It was an involuntary stab of attraction, sharp and immediate, followed instantly by a wave of cold nausea. "This is wrong," Rian muttered. "Slavery is illegal in this sector, even here." "Technically illegal," Jax corrected him, keeping his voice low. "But technicalities do not pay the syndicate's docking fines. And look at her. Ryan, people say they are not even fully people, that they are weapons." Rian looked at her hands. Her fingers were long, elegant, twitching slightly as if playing an invisible instrument. The bioluminescent markings on her arms flared brighter for a second, a flash of indigo fury that betrayed her calm mask. "She is a person," Rian said, his jaw tightening until his teeth ached. The auctioneer continued his pitch, listing her features like he was selling a used starship. He spoke of her genetic purity, her rumored telepathic resilience, her exotic physiology. Every word was a layer of filth that coated Rian's mind. A memory slammed into him, unbidden and violent. He was 10 years old. The sky of his homeworld was burning. Corporate mercenaries had breached the colony defenses, claiming eminent domain over the mineral rights. He remembered the noise, the screaming of thrusters and people. He remembered hiding in the crawl space, watching through a grate as they dragged his mother and father out of the house. He remembered the feeling of absolute, crushing powerlessness. He had been small, and they had been giants with guns. Later, the official report would call it an industrial accident, a tragic gas leak, no survivors. Rian looked at the Larathi woman. She was trapped in a box of energy, surrounded by giants with credits, waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. The parallel was so sharp it felt like a physical blow. He looked at the front row. A large, bloat-faced crime boss was licking his lips, his eyes undressing the woman in the cage. He whispered something to his bodyguard, laughing, a wet, ugly sound. "We will start the bidding at 5,000 credits, the auctioneer shouted. 5,000! The bloat-faced man yelled immediately, raising a jeweled hand. 6,000! Shouted a voice from the back. 7. Rian's hand was in his pocket, gripping the credit chit. It contained everything he had. The payment for the job, his meager savings, the emergency fund for the Wayfarer's engine overhaul. It was his life's blood, liquefied into data. 8,000 credits to the gentleman in the red cloak. The auctioneer called out. The bloat-faced man laughed. 10,000. The crowd quieted. 10,000 credits was a fortune. It was enough to buy a small ship. It was enough to disappear for a year. 10,000 going once, the auctioneer said, grinning. Rian felt a heat rising in his chest, a reckless, suicidal fire that burned away his common sense. He looked at the woman again, her silver eyes locked onto his. She didn't plead. She just watched him, witnessing his struggle. 15,000, Rian said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the silence like a whip crack. Jax choked. Ryan, are you insane? That is everything. That is fuel. That is food. Rian did not look at him. He stared at the auctioneer. 15,000 credits from the pilot in the back. The auctioneer squealed, delighted by the sudden escalation. The bloat-faced boss turned, his eyes narrowing into slits. He looked Ryan up and down, sneering at the worn leather jacket. 16,000, the boss spat. Ryan's heart hammered against his ribs. He did a quick mental calculation. If he liquidated his retirement account, which was a joke anyway, and drained the maintenance reserve. 17,500, Rian called out. The crowd murmured. They thought he was crazy. He looked like a drifter, a nobody. 18,000, the boss roared, standing up. Do you know who I am, boy? Ryan ignored him. He was trembling, not with fear, but with a strange, terrifying clarity. He could not let her go to that man. He simply could not. 20,000, Ryan said. The number hung in the air. It was an absurd amount. It was ruinous. Jax grabbed his shoulder hard. Ryan, stop. You cannot afford this. You will be flying on fumes for a year. I will figure it out, Ryan snapped, shaking him off. The crime boss turned purple. He opened his mouth to bid again, but his accountant leaned in, whispering urgently in his ear. The boss slammed his fist into his palm, glared at Ryan with murderous intent, and sat down. 20,000 going once. The auctioneer's voice was trembling with greed. Going twice. Rian held his breath. He felt lightheaded. Sold. To the freelance pilot. The gavel slammed down. A digital crack that echoed through the plaza. The crowd erupted into jeers and applause. The auctioneer pointed a spindly finger at Ryan. He bought a caged alien girl, folks. Let us see how long he survives her. Rian stood there, the adrenaline crashing out of his system, leaving him cold and shaking. The credits transferred automatically from his chit, the device buzzing in his pocket as his balance plummeted to nearly zero. Jax looked at him, his face pale. You idiot. You absolute sentimental idiot. That man was Varek. He runs the southern quadrant. You just humiliated him. Rian rubbed his face with a hand that was not quite steady. I know. And now we have a Lirathi, a dangerous illegal asset. Helix Dominion will be looking for her. The Syndicate will be looking for her. And we have no money for fuel. I said I would figure it out, Rian said, though he had no idea how. Come on. Let us get the package and get out of here before Varek decides to save money and just shoot us. The docking bay corridor was quiet, a stark contrast to the bazaar. The hum of the station's ventilation system was the only sound. Rian walked alongside the floating grav cage, guiding it with a remote control. Inside, the woman, Kara, the auctioneer had named her, stood perfectly still, her hands still bound by the energy cuffs. Jax had gone ahead to prep the Wayfarer for an immediate hard burn launch, leaving Rian alone with his impulse purchase. Rian stopped the cage near the airlock of his ship. He looked at the control panel on the side of the floating prison. He felt sick. He had just bought a person. The transaction lay heavy in his stomach like swallowed lead. He keyed in the release sequence. The energy field flickered and died with a sharp hiss. The restraints on her wrists deactivated and fell to the floor with a metallic clatter. Rian took a step back, keeping his hand near the blaster holstered at his hip. Not out of aggression, but out of uncertain instinct. "You are free," Rian said, his voice rougher than he intended. Kara stepped out of the cage. Her movement was fluid, like water flowing over stone. She stretched her arms, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin brightening as her circulation returned. She was taller than him, or perhaps it was just the way she held herself, spine straight, chin lifted. "I am not your owner," Rian continued, looking away from her intense gaze. "I do not want anything from you. The airlock is open. The station is that way. Just get out of here. Go, before someone changes their mind." He expected her to run. He expected her to bolt for the shadows and vanish into the station's underbelly. She did not move toward the exit. Instead, she turned toward him. She took a slow, deliberate step in his direction. Her silver eyes studied him, tilting her head slightly as if she were dissecting his soul, peeling back the layers of cynicism to see the damage underneath. The silence stretched, charged with a strange, static awareness. Rian felt the hair on his arm stand up. She stepped closer, invading his personal space. He could smell her, a scent like ozone and crushed rainflowers, alien and clean. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was melodic, a dual-tone resonance that seemed to vibrate in his chest. It was a voice made for weaving spells or commanding armies. "Why did you spend so much on a stranger in a box?" Rian shifted his weight, uncomfortable. He crossed his arms, trying to put a barrier between them. "I have poor impulse control," he deflected, forcing a sardonic tone. "And a hero complex. It is a bad combination. My therapist says it stems from a need for validation." He was joking, but the anger was there, simmering beneath the surface. Anger at the auction, at the crowd, at the universe that allowed cages like that to exist. Kara did not smile at the joke. She watched the anger flicker in his aura. She took another step, until she was only inches away. Rian had to resist the urge to step back. "You are angry," she observed softly. "Not at me, at the cage." "Yeah, well, I do not like seeing people treated like luggage," Rian muttered. "Now go. Seriously, I'm broke. I have a crime boss mad at me, and I really just want to go to sleep." Kara looked at the open airlock, then back at the corridor leading into the station. Her expression shifted. The eerie calmness remained, but something sharp and calculating entered her eyes. "You bought me to free me," she said quietly. "That is the idea. But now, you cannot walk away," she said. Rian frowned. "What are you talking about? I just told you to leave. You are free." "No," she said. "You are already inside their game." She gestured gracefully toward the corridor behind them. "The ones who put me in that cage. They do not make clerical errors. They do not lose assets. They let me be sold because they needed to move me without a paper trail. But now that the transaction is done, they will come to collect. They will not let me vanish. And they certainly will not let the man who bought me walk free." Rian stared at her, the blood draining from his face. "What do you mean? Collect?" Before she could answer, the station's general alert klaxon began to blare, a harsh, rhythmic whooping sound that echoed off the metal walls. Red emergency lights began to strobe in the corridor. Heavy boots sounded on the deck plating around the corner. Not the shuffle of dock workers, but the synchronized, heavy tread of armored security or mercenaries. Rian's hand dropped to his blaster. Oh, hell. Kara watched the corner where the sound was coming from. Her bioluminescence flared, the patterns on her skin turning a sharp, electric blue. She looked back at Rian, and for the first time, A faint, imperceptible smile touched her lips. It was not a smile of gratitude. It was the smile of a general surveying a battlefield. "If you wish to live, pilot," she said, her voice cutting through the noise of the alarms, "you will follow me." She turned and sprinted, not away from him, but toward his ship. Ryan stood frozen for a split second, his mind reeling. He had bought a victim to save her. He had opened the cage to be the savior. But as the squad of corporate soldiers rounded the corner, raising their rifles, Ryan realized with a jolt of terrifying clarity that the dynamic had just flipped. He scrambled up the ramp after her, cursing the day he was born, as the first plasma bolt scorched the plating where he had just been standing. The station alarm screamed with a mechanical banshee wail that vibrated in the fillings of Ryan's teeth. The corridors of the lower sector were bathed in rotating crimson light, turning the rust-streaked walls into a strobing nightmare. "Move!" Ryan shouted, shoving a bewildered drifter out of the way as he hustled Kara toward the service lifts. The automated voice of the station authority boomed over the intercom, its pleasant tone jarring against the chaos. "Attention. Breach in asset containment detected in Sector 4. All transit locked down. Security teams are deployed. Please remain calm and present identification for scanning." Ryan swore, a colorful string of pilot slang that questioned the parentage of the station administrator. "You were supposed to just leave," Ryan hissed, glancing over his shoulder. "I open the cage, you run away. I go have a drink. That was the plan. Simple, elegant. Now I am running from half the security grid with a glowing beacon of probable cause." Kara ran beside him, her bare feet making no sound on the grime-slicked deck plates. She did not look winded. She did not look frightened. She looked annoyed, like a queen forced to walk through a puddle. "Your plan was based on the assumption that they would let me walk," Kara said, her voice cutting through the klaxons with uncanny clarity. "It was a naive assumption." Ryan jammed his thumb into the call button of the lift, but the panel flashed a denial code. "Transit locked." "Of course." "Great," Ryan muttered. "Just great. We are trapped on the promenade level with a 10,000 credit bounty on our heads." "Not trapped," Kara said. She grabbed his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her skin cool and dry. Before Ryan could protest, she yanked him away from the main lift cluster and toward a nondescript maintenance hatch half hidden behind a recycling unit. "Where are you going?" Ryan demanded, stumbling after her. "That is a waste chute. It is a thermal exhaust vent for the secondary power relays," Kara corrected him. She placed her palm against the rusted locking mechanism. Her eyes narrowed, silver light flaring in her pupils. There was a sharp click, and the hatch hissed open. "It leads directly to the docking ring, bypassing the security checkpoints." Ryan stared at her. "How do you know that?" "You have been in a cage for 3 days." "I observe," she said simply. Ducking into the dark, steam-filled tunnel. "Are you coming, pilot? Or do you prefer to explain your purchase to the armed men approaching from the north corridor?" Ryan looked back. Through the strobe of the emergency lights, he saw the sleek black armor of corporate tactical teams moving through the crowd, shoving civilians aside. "Right," Ryan said. "Exhaust vent it is." He scrambled into the tunnel after her, sealing the hatch just as a plasma bolt scorched the metal where his head had been. The shaft was narrow, smelling of ozone and old coolant. Pipes hissed and rattled all around them, dangerously hot. Ryan had to hunch over to keep moving, his flight jacket snagging on protruding bolts. Kara, despite her height, moved with a fluid, predatory grace. She navigated the maze of pipes and conduits as if she had the blueprints etched into her eyelids. Ryan's heart was hammering against his ribs, But his mind was racing, trying to catch up with the reality of the situation. He watched the luminescent patterns on Kara's back pulse in the darkness, a soft, rhythmic violet light that acted as a guide in the gloom. I am trusting the girl I found in a space cage to guide us away from the people who built the cage, Rian muttered to himself, wiping sweat from his forehead. This is it. This is how I die, chasing a glow stick through a sewer. If you continue to talk, they will hear us. Kara's voice drifted back, amused and calm. They reached a junction where the shaft widened. Kara stopped abruptly. Holding up a hand, Rian nearly collided with her. "What is it?" he whispered. "Wait," she commanded. Below them, through a grating in the floor, Rian could see the corridor leading to Bay 94. It was the only route to the Wayfarer, and it was blocked. 3 corporate enforcers stood at the intersection. These were not station security rent-a-cops. These were Helix Dominion heavy infantry, matte black armor, full-face sensory helmets, and heavy repeater rifles slung across their chests. They were scanning the area with thermal imagers. "We cannot get past them," Rian whispered, his hand drifting to his light blaster. It was a pea shooter compared to what they were packing. "If I engage, we are dead in 3 seconds. "Do not engage," Kara said softly. She closed her eyes. Rian watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the bioluminescence on her skin began to shift. The soft violet deepened, turning into a strobing hypnotic pattern of indigo and white. A low sound began to emanate from her, not from her throat, but seemingly from the air around her. It was a hum, right on the edge of hearing, a vibration that made Ryan's teeth ache and his vision blur for a second. "Cover your ears," she murmured. Rian clapped his hands over his ears. Kara dropped through the maintenance hatch in the ceiling above the enforcers. She did not land like a person, she landed like a feather, completely silent. The enforcers turned, weapons raising, but the moment they looked at her, they hesitated. The hum intensified, a psychic resonance that Rian could feel rattling his own skull even from a distance. The enforcers staggered. One of them dropped his rifle, clutching his helmet as if a spike had been driven into his brain. Kara moved. She was a blur of motion, spinning between them. She did not use a weapon. She placed a palm on the chest of the lead enforcer, and a pulse of visible light erupted from her hand. The man went rigid, his armor system sparking, and he collapsed backward, unconscious. The other 2 were disoriented, firing wildly into the walls. Kara ducked under a wild swing, sweeping the legs of the second guard and delivering a precise, open-handed strike to the base of his neck. He crumpled. The third guard managed to level his rifle, shaking his head to clear the psychic static. Rian, watching from the grate, raised his blaster, ready to fire a desperate shot to save her. He didn't have to. Kara simply stepped inside the guard's guard, her movement faster than the heavy armor could track. She placed 2 fingers against the side of his helmet. The guard stiffened, let out a choked sound, and slumped to the deck. Silence returned to the corridor, save for the distant wail of alarms. Rian stared down through the grate, his mouth slightly open. He had seen bar fights. He had seen military skirmishes. He had never seen violence that looked so much like art. Kara looked up at the grate, her silver eyes shining in the dim light. Her markings were pulsing rapidly now, fading back to their resting violet hue. "The path is clear." "Pilot," she said. Rian scrambled down the ladder, landing beside the pile of unconscious armored bodies. He looked at the enforcers, then at Kara. She was breathing slightly harder, a sheen of sweat on her pale skin but otherwise unhurt. "Remind me," Rian said, his voice shaky. never to owe you money. We must go, Kara said, gesturing down the hall. Your ship. They sprinted the last 100 meters to the docking bay. The blast doors to Bay 94 were half open. Rian slammed his hand onto the access panel, overriding the lock with his pilot codes. As the doors hissed open, the sleek, ugly, beautiful shape of the Wayfarer greeted them. It was a modified heavy freighter, shaped like a brick with engines, scarred from asteroid impacts and hasty repairs. The loading ramp was down, and steam was venting from the thrusters. Jax was standing at the top of the ramp, a heavy wrench in his hand, looking frantic. "Where have you been?" Jax yelled over the roar of the engines. "I have had pre-flight running for 5 minutes. The tower is screaming at me to power down. We are leaving!" Ryan shouted, shoving Kara up the ramp ahead of him. "Go! Go!" Jax saw Kara and his eyes went wide, but he didn't ask questions. He turned and sprinted for the engine room. Ryan hit the ramp retract button the moment his boots hit the deck. "Get strapped in!" Rian yelled to Kara, pointing toward the small crash couch in the mess hall. He didn't wait to see if she obeyed. He threw himself up the ladder to the cockpit, vaulting into the pilot's seat. His hands flew across the console, flipping switches in a sequence born of muscle memory. Maglocks disengaged, Rian recited to himself. Thrusters at 40%, shields, non-existent, great. The comms panel lit up with the angry face of the station controller. "Wayfarer, you are in violation of a Class 1 lockdown. Power down your vessel immediately or we will open fire. Send me the bill," Rian yelled and punched the throttle forward. The ship lurched. The repulsor lifts groaned as they fought the artificial gravity of the dock. The Wayfarer shot out of the bay, scraping the paint off the starboard hull against the bay doors. Rian slammed the yoke to the left, rolling the ship hard to avoid the station's defensive turrets. Flak bursts blossomed outside the viewport. Silent explosions of orange and black. "Hold on!" Rian shouted over the ship's intercom. He pushed the engines to the red line, dumping fuel into the afterburners. The G-force slammed him back into his seat. The station grew smaller in the rear view, a glittering jewel of corruption shrinking against the black velvet of space. Rian did not let up until they were well past the outer marker, drifting in the shadow of a nearby moon to mask their thermal signature. He slumped in his chair, exhaling a breath he felt like he had been holding for an hour. His hands were shaking. He stared at the stars, the adrenaline slowly turning into a cold dread. He had done it. He was a fugitive. Ryan unbuckled and climbed down the ladder to the living quarters. The central area of the Wayfarer was cramped, a combination of galley, lounge, and medical bay. It was cluttered with spare parts, data pads, and empty coffee cups. Kara was standing in the middle of the room. She had not strapped in. She was running her hand along the back of his worn flight couch, examining the space with a critical eye. She looked out of place. Her ethereal, glowing presence made the scuffed metal and grease stains look even dirtier. She picked up a nutrient paste packet from the table, sniffed it, and set it down with a look of mild confusion. "You live in a box," she observed. "It is a ship," Ryan snapped, walking past her to the tiny galley to pour himself a cup of water. His hands were still trembling. "And it is my box." She turned, her gaze landing on the bulkhead where Ryan had pinned a holographic, unmatched photo. It was old, the colors fading. A man, a woman, and a young boy standing in front of a colonial prefab unit, smiling under a dual sun. She stepped closer to it. "Your family?" "Do not touch that," Rian warned, his voice sharp. Kara lowered her hand, turning to face him. The tension in the small room spiked. The adrenaline of the escape was fading, leaving behind the stark reality of what had just happened. Rian downed the water and slammed the cup onto the metal counter. He turned on her, the anger finally bubbling over. "Who are you?" Ryan demanded. Kara stood poised, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. "I told you, I am—" "No," Ryan interrupted, stepping closer. "You are not just some random abductee. I saw what you did back there. You took out a Helix-heavy squad without breaking a sweat. You knew the station schematics better than the maintenance droids. And you said the corporation was hunting you specifically." He gestured wildly at the hull. "I just blew my life savings and became a wanted criminal to get you out of a cage. I think I deserve to know exactly what kind of trouble I have invited onto my ship." Kara watched him, her expression unreadable. She walked over to the small galley table and sat down, her posture perfect even on the cheap, bolted-down stool. "Sit, Ryan Cole," she said. "I prefer to stand." "Sit," she repeated. It was not a request. Ryan grit his teeth and sat opposite her. The table was so small their knees almost brushed. "My name is Kara Lear Keith," she began, her voice steady. "I am, or I was, the second daughter of the High Council of Lyrath." Ryan stared at her. Lyrath, the homeworld of her species, the one that was currently under a blockaded quarantine by the Helix Dominion. "Royalty?" Ryan asked incredulously. "I bought an alien princess?" "We do not use titles like kings or princesses," Kara said, waving the term away. "I was a diplomat and a scientist." She leaned forward, her silver eyes locking onto his. "My people are dying. Ryan, the Helix Dominion is not just occupying our world for resources, they are harvesting us." Ryan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's life support. Harvesting. They discovered that our biology, the neural lattice that allows us to communicate psychically, can be distilled, processed. They are using us to create organic processors for their next generation of warships. They are turning my people into wetware components, living batteries for their fleet. Ryan felt sick. He had heard rumors of Helix's brutality, but this was industrial-scale genocide. "I was part of the resistance," Kara continued. "We were trying to smuggle proof of their experiments to the Galactic Council, but we were betrayed. I was captured." She paused, looking down at her hands. The light in her skin dimmed, pulsating with a slow, mournful rhythm. "I allowed myself to be taken," she whispered. "What?" Ryan asked. "I carried the proof inside me," she said. "I thought they would take me to the primary lab, the facility where the data is stored. I intended to interface with their mainframe and destroy it from the inside. A suicide mission." She looked up, a flash of frustration in her eyes. But the local commander was greedy. Instead of processing me, he saw a high-value exotic female and decided to sell me on the black market to pad his retirement fund. He put me in that cage to hide me until the transfer could be made. Ryan sat back, rubbing his temples. The magnitude of the screw-up was dawning on him. "So," Ryan said slowly, "by buying you, I did not just save you. I accidentally stole a high-value political prisoner who was trying to break into a supermax facility." "Yes," Kara said. "You disrupted the chain of custody. Helix Dominion does not just want me back because I am valuable property. They want me back because if I vanish, their entire operation is at risk of exposure. And now I am the unknown variable," Ryan realized. "They do not know who I am or who I work for. They will assume I am a rival operative." "Precisely," Ryan groaned, putting his head in his hands. "I just wanted to do one good thing. Just one. Unlock the cage, feel morally superior for 5 minutes, and go back to hauling grain." Kara did not speak for a moment. She watched him, her gaze softening. She stood up and moved around the table. Rian tensed as she leaned over his shoulder. She was close, too close. He could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, a dry, electric heat. Her hair brushed against his cheek, smelling of that strange, clean rain scent. She reached past him, tapping a sequence of coordinates into the data pad lying on the table. "We need to go here," she said, pointing to a sector deep in the fringe. Rian tried to focus on the map, but his heart was pounding. The proximity was overwhelming. Her bioluminescence was casting a soft violet glow over his hands, over the scars on his knuckles. "What is there?" Ryan asked, his voice sounding tight to his own ears. "A Lirathi biotech refuge," she said, hidden in the atmosphere of a gas giant. She pulled back slightly, but she stayed standing next to him, her hip resting against the table edge. "The data I carry. The proof of their crimes. It is encoded in my nervous system. I cannot just download it to a drive. It is biological. I am a living data vault. I need a Lirathi laboratory to extract it safely. If we do not extract it, the data will degrade, and the proof will be lost forever." Rian looked at the coordinates. It was a suicide run, through pirate territory, past Helix patrols. "You want me to fly you across half the sector, dodging the most powerful corporation in the galaxy, so you can upload a file?" Rian asked. "I want you to help me start a war," Kara said calmly. Rian laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Lady, look at me. Look at this ship. I am not a soldier. I am a cargo pilot who can barely afford fuel. I am not the guy you want for a revolution." Kara moved again, stepping in front of him so he had to look at her. She reached out, her fingers hovering just inches from his face. She did not touch him, but he could feel the ghost of her touch, a tingle on his skin. "I see you, Rian Cole," she said softly. "I see the man who spent his last credit to save a stranger. I see the man who keeps a picture of a dead family on his wall because he cannot bear to let them go." Rian flinched. "Don't." "You hate them," she said. "The corporations. The ones who treat life like a spreadsheet. You hate yourself for surviving when your family did not. You think you are weak because you are still alive." "Stop it," Rian warned, pushing his chair back. She leaned in, placing her hands on the table, trapping him with her gaze. Her voice dropped, becoming low and intimate, vibrating with that strange, compelling resonance. "You bought a caged alien girl to free her, Rian Cole. But let me give you an offer you can't refuse." Rian stared at her, mesmerized. "What offer?" Kara's eyes searched his face. "Take me to the refuge. Help me extract the data. Protect me until we can broadcast the truth to the Council. Stand beside me while we burn Helix Dominion to the ground." "And what do I get?" Rian asked, his voice barely a whisper. "A medal? A thank you card? You get justice," she said. "For your family, for my people." She paused, and the light in her skin shifted to a warm, golden hue. "And you get sanctuary. Under Lirathi law, if you aid a high counselor, you are granted full citizenship and protection. You will never have to run again. You will share in the power we reclaim." She hesitated then, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her calm mask. "And," she added, her voice softer, almost shy, "if we survive, I offer you a bond. A bond. In my culture, those who fight together, who share the weight of life and death, we bind our lives politically, psychically, intimately. It is a permanent connection. You would not be alone. Rian, never again." Rian sat there, stunned. The air in the galley felt thick, heavy with the weight of her words. She was offering him a revolution, a new life, and her. He felt a flush rise in his neck. He tried to deflect. to use humor as a shield like he always did. Most first dates involve dinner, Rian stammered, his voice cracking slightly. Not overthrowing megacorps, and maybe a movie. Kara tilted her head, not fully understanding the idiom. But she smiled. It was a real smile this time, dazzling and dangerous. "We have no time for movies," she said. Rian looked down at his hands. He thought about the empty ache that had been in his chest for 20 years. He thought about the way Varek the crime boss had looked at her. He thought about his parents, erased by a corporate bottom line. "I am not a protector," Rian whispered. "I failed the only people who ever mattered. I watched them die. Kara. I hid in a hole and watched." Kara reached out and finally touched him. She placed her hand over his on the table. Her skin was warm, and a wave of calm washed over him, quieting the panic in his mind. "I am not asking for a perfect savior," she said. "I do not need a knight in white armor. I need someone who knows what it means to lose everything and still chooses to help. I need you." The silence stretched for a long minute, filled only by the hum of the ship's reactor. Rian looked at her hand covering his. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. It was an impulsive gesture, but it felt right. "Okay," Rian said. "Okay, I will take you." Kara let out a breath she seemed to have been holding. "Thank you, but one condition," Rian said, his voice firming up. "Name it." "You are not mine," Rian said, looking her dead in the eye. "I am not your owner. I am not your master. If we do this, we do it as equals, partners, or I turn this ship around right now." Kara stared at him. The golden glow on her skin spread, intensifying, wrapping around her like a halo. She squeezed his hand. "Equals," she agreed. The moment held, suspended in the recycled air of the cabin. Then the ship's computer chimed. "Calculations complete. FTL drive ready." Rian pulled his hand back, clearing his throat, suddenly flustered by the intensity of the moment. "Right, FTL. We need to jump before they track our vector." He stood up, heading for the ladder. Kara followed him. As he climbed, Kara spoke up, her voice regaining that teasing, curious lilt. "Ryan? Yeah? I have read about human customs," she said. "Since we are now partners, is sharing a sleeping compartment part of the bonding ceremony?" Rian missed a rung on the ladder and nearly fell. He caught himself hanging by one arm, his face turning beet red. "What?" "No!" Ryan sputtered, looking down at her. She was looking up, an amused, probing glint in her silver eyes. "Humans. We usually take things slower." "Much slower. There are steps," Kara hummed, a thoughtful sound. "Pity," she murmured, starting to climb after him. "I find efficiency to be a virtue." Rian scrambled up into the cockpit, his heart racing for an entirely new reason. He threw himself into the pilot's seat and punched the FTL engage button with unnecessary force. As the stars outside the viewport stretched into lines of infinite light, Rian Cole realized two things. First, he was in way over his head, and second, for the first time in 20 years, he wasn't just drifting, he was flying. The fabric of hyperspace tore open, spitting the wayfarer out into normal space with a shudder that rattled the bulkheads. The viewport filled not with stars, but with ghosts. They had dropped into the graveyard of Sector 7. It was an old war front, a testament to a conflict forgotten by everyone except the scavengers and the historians. The void was choked with the twisted husks of capital ships, drifting like silent metallic whales. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers, shattered hulls, frozen clouds of vented atmosphere, and the glitter of millions of metal fragments catching the distant starlight. Rian Cole gripped the yoke, his knuckles white. He navigated the ship through a gap between two severed engine nacelles that were larger than a city block. "You have a very adventurous navigation style," Rian muttered, correcting a drift that threatened to scrape their port wing against a floating gun turret. "Most people avoid the sector where ships go to die. It is the only route where helix sensors cannot track a clear wake." Kara replied. She was sitting in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes scanning the debris field with an intensity that suggested she was seeing more than just metal and vacuum. "The magnetic interference from the wreckage masks our ion trail. It also masks the giant jagged pieces of metal trying to kill us," Rian countered, banking hard to avoid a cloud of frozen coolant. The cockpit was dim, lit only by the dashboard instruments and the soft, rhythmic pulse of Kara's bioluminescence. In the low light, the violet patterns on her skin seemed to breathe, casting long, shifting shadows across the controls. She turned to him, her expression serene despite the piloting hazards. "My people believe that navigation is not just about avoiding obstacles," she said. "It is about understanding the flow, the connection between where you are and where you intend to be." "Right," Rian grunted, firing a maneuvering thruster. "We call that not crashing." Kara smiled faintly. "You simplify everything. It is a defense mechanism. Maybe I just like things simple." "Nothing about the Lirathi is simple," Kara said, her voice taking on a reflective tone. "We are a species built on complexity, on connection. To us, isolation is the only true death. Our nervous systems are designed to interface, to share." Rian glanced at her. "Interface? You mean like telepathy? More than that?" She held up her hand, the markings glowing brighter. "We share sensation, emotion, memory. When two Lirathi bond, the barrier of the self dissolves. We believe that pleasure and empathy are the highest forms of communication. They are sacred, to feel another's joy as your own, to carry their pain so they do not have to bear it alone. That is what it means to be alive." Rian felt a sudden dryness in his throat. The way she spoke about it, it wasn't just biology. It was intimate, incredibly, dangerously intimate. "So," he said, trying to keep his voice casual, "your bodies adapt?" "We attune," she corrected. "When we choose a partner, our physiology shifts to match theirs. Our sense, our biorhythms, even our skin temperature, the quorum, we become compatible. In every sense." The silence that followed was thick. Rian stared straight ahead, navigating through the ribs of a shattered cruiser. But his mind was on the woman sitting next to him. The idea of a bond that deep was terrifying to a man who had spent 20 years building walls around himself. "Speaking of compatibility," Kara said, shifting in her seat to face him fully. "I have been observing your species' media during my confinement. I have questions about your mating rituals." Rian nearly flew them into a floating piece of hull plating. "My what? Is it true," she asked, her tone genuinely curious, "that you offer each other dead flowers and melted sugar to prove suitability?" Rian blinked. "You mean roses and chocolates? Dead plant reproductive organs and heated sucrose?" She nodded. "It seems barbaric and inefficient. How does decaying vegetation prove genetic viability?" "It is symbolic," Rian said, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. "Flowers are pretty, and chocolate tastes good. It is a gesture. It shows you care enough to spend credits on something that has no practical purpose other than to make the other person happy." Kara tilted her head. "We prove suitability by opening our minds, by showing the other our truest self without deception. Why would you need confectionery when you can simply share the feeling of desire directly? Because humans cannot do that. Kara, we have to guess. We use words and gifts and awkward dinners where we try not to spill soup on ourselves. She looked at him, her silver eyes shimmering with amusement. You make it sound very difficult. It is, Ryan said. It is a nightmare. Suddenly, the proximity alarm screamed. Ryan's eyes snapped to the radar. 3 red blips had appeared from behind the bulk of a destroyed dreadnought. They were closing fast. Scavengers, Ryan shouted, slamming the throttle forward. The Wayfarer leaped ahead, engines roaring, the comms crackled to life, a harsh, static-filled voice barking at them. Unknown freighter, power down and prepare to be boarded. We know you have the Lirathi asset. Surrender her, and we might leave you with an escape pod. They were tipped off. Ryan cursed, his hands flying over the weapons console. Hang on! A bolt of green plasma whipped past the cockpit, scorching the shields. The ship shuddered violently. Kara did not panic. She reached out and strapped herself tightly into the harness, her face set into a mask of concentration. They are flanking, she said, her voice calm but tight. 2 on the port, 1 coming high on the starboard. Ryan yanked the stick back, sending the ship into a spiraling climb up the spine of the dead dreadnought. The inertial dampeners whined, struggling to compensate. I see them, Ryan gritted out. He dove into a narrow trench running along the dreadnought's hull, using the metal walls as cover. The scavenger ships, smaller and more agile interceptors, pursued them, firing relentlessly. Explosions blossomed against the wreckage around them, showering the Wayfarer in shrapnel. Ryan was flying on instinct now, a cold focus taking over. He rolled, jinked, and weaved, threading the needle through gaps that barely looked wide enough for a probe, let alone a freighter. Kara leaned toward him, her shoulder pressing firmly against his. She closed her eyes. Go left, she whispered. Now. Ryan didn't question it. He banked hard left, narrowly missing a collapsing support beam that would have sheared their wing off. A second later, a scavenger ship slammed into the beam, disappearing in a fireball. How did you know? Ryan breathed. I can feel their intent, Kara murmured. Her glowing hand gripped his arm, not shaking him, but anchoring him. The pilot on the right is hesitating. He is afraid. The one behind us is aggressive. He will overcommit. Ryan felt a strange sensation, a clarity that wasn't his own. He could sense the spatial geometry of the debris field with unnatural sharpness. It was as if Kara was processing the data and feeding it directly into his brain. Okay, Ryan said, a grin touching his lips. Let us teach them why you do not chase a cargo pilot through a junkyard. He saw it ahead, the ruptured reactor core of a battleship, still leaking venting plasma in radioactive bursts. Brace yourself, Ryan yelled. He drove the Wayfarer straight toward the reactor. The remaining scavenger ships, sensing blood, accelerated to catch him. At the last possible second, Ryan fired the retro thrusters, flipping the ship end over end. The Wayfarer skidded backward in a controlled drift. Fire the port maneuvering jet, Kara said, her voice a sharp command in his ear. Ryan fired it. The ship swung around behind the bulk of a heavy shield generator plate. The 2 pursuers, unable to react in time, flew straight into the path of a venting plasma plume. The superheated gas caught them, stripping their shields and melting their hulls in an instant. Their screams cut off as their ships disintegrated. Ryan punched the main engines, blasting them away from the radiation zone and back into the safety of deep space. He flew in silence for 10 minutes, checking sensors, waiting for more ghosts. There were none. Clear. Rian exhaled, the word coming out as a shaky puff of air. We are clear. He slumped back in his seat, the adrenaline crash hitting him like a physical weight. Beside him, Kara unclenched her hands from the armrests. Her light was pulsing rapidly, a sign of her own elevated heart rate. Nice flying, she said softly. Rian laughed, a jagged, hysterical sound. Nice navigating. He unbuckled and stumbled out of the cockpit, needing to check the damage. Kara followed him down to the cargo bay. The bay was a mess. Several crates had broken loose during the maneuvers, spilling machine parts across the deck. Rian kicked a crate, anger suddenly flaring up to replace the fear. That was too close, he shouted, the echo ringing in the hollow space. They knew we were here. They knew about you. Kara stood amidst the scattered debris, her arms crossed. We survived. This time, Ryan spun on her. What about next time? I am dragging you into a war zone with a ship held together by duct tape and prayers. You could have been killed back there. And so could you, Kara shot back, stepping into his space. Do not pretend this is only about my safety. You are terrified. Yes, I am terrified, Rian roared. I am terrified because I am the idiot who decided to care. I swore I would never do this again. I swore I would not be responsible for another life. And now look at us. He ran a hand through his hair, his chest heaving. If you die, Kara, if I get you killed, that is it for me. I cannot survive that again. I just cannot. Kara looked at him, her expression shifting from defensive to something incredibly soft. She saw the raw, bleeding wound of his past, ripped open by the firefight. Rian, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She stepped over a pile of gears and stood directly in front of him. Rian stopped pacing, breathing hard, looking down at her. I am terrified too, she admitted, not of dying, but of failing, of dying in a cage, alone, without ever seeing my home again, without ever finishing what I started. She reached up. Her hand hesitated for a moment, then she touched his face. Her fingertips brushed the jagged scar along his jaw. The contact sent a jolt through him, warm and electric. But I am not alone now, she whispered, and neither are you. Rian froze. Her touch was grounding, silencing the noise in his head. You have so many scars, she murmured, tracing the line of his jaw, evidence of survival. I find them beautiful. Rian stared at her, the silver eyes, the pulsing violet light, the fierce intelligence and vulnerability mixed together. The air in the cargo bay seemed to hum with the energy of the ship's engines, or maybe it was just the blood rushing in his ears. Kara, he breathed. He didn't make a conscious decision. He just leaned in. Kara met him halfway. The kiss was hesitant at first, a testing of boundaries. Her lips were cool, but her mouth was warm. Then, as Ryan's hand came up to cup the back of her neck, tangling in her dark hair, the hesitation vanished. It became fierce, a collision of adrenaline and desire. Rian pulled her closer, his other arm wrapping around her waist, lifting her slightly off the deck. Kara responded instantly, her body pressing against his, firm and yielding all at once. The sensation was overwhelming. It wasn't just a physical kiss. Rian felt a rush of warmth flood his chest, a golden current that seemed to flow from her skin into his. He could feel her heartbeat thudding against his own, a syncopated rhythm that was rapidly aligning. Her bioluminescence flared bright, bathing the dim cargo bay in a wash of intense indigo light. They broke apart, gasping for air. Their foreheads rested against each other, eyes closed. Rian's hands were shaking on her waist. Kara pulled back just an inch, her breathing ragged. Ryan, she warned, her voice trembling. You must understand. Leirathi bonds, they are deep. They are not casual. Physical contact like this, it begins a process. It opens a door that is difficult to close. Rian opened his eyes, looking at her. He felt dizzy, intoxicated by the proximity and the strange psychic feedback loop he had just tasted. He let out a short, breathless laugh. "Lady," he whispered, "I think I am already in too deep." Kara searched his face, looking for regret. She found none. A small crooked smile touched her lips. "Perhaps," she agreed softly. She stepped back, the loss of contact leaving Ryan feeling suddenly cold. "We should check the stabilizers," she said, her voice regaining some of its professional composure, though her cheeks were flushed a deep violet. "Yeah," Ryan said, clearing his throat and stepping back. "Stabilizers. Right. Good idea." He watched her walk toward the engineering panel, his heart still doing acrobatics in his chest. Light years away, in the pristine, sterile office of a Helix Dominion spire, a man in a white suit stared at a holographic display. "The target has escaped the ambush," a subordinate reported. The scavenger team was eliminated. The man, Director Kalen, sipped his tea. He showed no emotion. Beside him sat Counselor Voran, a Larathi traitor whose skin was dull and gray, stripped of its natural luminescence by years of suppression drugs. "They are heading for the fringe," Voran said, his voice raspy. "They will try to reach a safe house. It does not matter where they go," Kalen said. He tapped a command on the console. "Deploy the Hunter-class vessel, the Void Stalker." Voran flinched. "That ship is equipped with psi dampeners. It will agony to her." "That is the point," Kalen said cold. "We do not need her happy, Counselor. We need her contained. And as for the human pilot, liquidate him on sight." The Wayfarer limped toward the coordinate Kara had provided. It was a listening post disguised as a mining depot, clinging to a rogue asteroid in the middle of nowhere. "We need fuel," Rian said as they approached the docking clamps, "and new transponder codes. If we use the old ones, Helix will find us in an hour." "This outpost is run by the Vorak Syndicate," Kara explained. "They are criminals, but they owe my family a debt. They will help us." They docked without incident. Rian grabbed his blaster, checking the charge. Kara stood by the airlock, adjusting the hood of a cloak she had fashioned from a survival blanket. It hid her features, but the glow of her skin still faintly illuminated the fabric. "We need a cover," Kara said. "We are smugglers," Ryan suggested. "Too suspicious. They will think we are rivals." Kara looked at him. "We are a bonded pair. Runaways." Rian choked. "A what?" "It is the safest cover. No one questions a Larathi who has chosen a mate. It explains why I am with a human and why we are hiding. It implies we are outcasts by choice." She stepped close to him, slipping her arm through his. "Just follow my lead," she whispered, "and try to look like you adore me." "That should not be too hard," Ryan muttered under his breath, earning a sharp look from her. They walked into the outpost's cantina. It was a dark, smoky pit filled with the dregs of the galaxy. Heads turned as they entered. Rian felt the familiar prickle of danger, but Kara leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "My love," she cooed, her voice pitched higher, soft and sickeningly sweet. "I am thirsty." Ryan stiffened, then forced himself to relax. He patted her hand, feeling ridiculous. "I will get you a drink, dearest," he said, the words tasting like ash. They approached the bar. The bartender, a scarred Vorax with cybernetic eyes, glared at them. "What do you want?" Kara lowered her hood just enough to show her silver eyes and the marking of her house. "We are looking for unexpected friends," she said in a low voice. The debt of kith stands unpaid. The bartender's mechanical eyes whirred. He looked from Kara to Ryan, then at the way she was clinging to his arm. The back room. He grunted. As they walked through the bar, Kara kept up the act. She trailed her fingers along Ryan's arm, whispering Larathi words into his ear. Shalari. Vakora. Ryan felt his face heating up. "What are you saying?" he hissed. "Terms of endearment," she whispered back, a laugh hidden in her tone. "I just called you my star-guided idiot and my mighty beast of burden." Ryan scowled. "I hate you." "I know, my love." In the back room, they met with the contact, an old information broker named Zek. He looked tired. "Kara," Zek said, bowing his head. "We thought you were dead." "I was delayed," she said, dropping the act instantly. "We need supplies and news." Zek's face was grim. "The news is bad. Several safe houses in the Middle Rim have gone dark in the last 2 cycles. Helix is not just hunting you. They are purging the network. They are moving up the timeline." Kara's glow dimmed. "The extraction lab. Still active," Zek said. "But for how long? The corporation is tightening the net. If you are going to make your move, you have to do it now." Ryan leaned forward. "Which corporation is heading the purge, specifically?" Zek tapped a screen. "Helix Dominion, obviously. But the security contracts are being handled by a subsidiary, Black Sun Solutions." Ryan felt the blood drain from his face. The room seemed to tilt. "Black Sun," he repeated. Kara looked at him, sensing the sudden spike in his distress. "Ryan, that is them," Ryan whispered. "That is the company that hit my colony, the ones who killed my parents." He stared at the wall, the pieces clicking together. It was the same enemy. The same people who had ordered the death of a mining colony to test a weapon were now hunting Kara to silence a revolution. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a pattern. Ryan stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "We need those codes," Ryan said, his voice cold and hard as iron, "and we need them now." That night, the Wayfarer drifted in the void, running silent while the new codes compiled. Ryan and Kara lay in the crew quarters. The bunks were stacked one above the other. Ryan was on the bottom, staring up at the metal slats of Kara's bunk. He couldn't sleep. The anger was a cold knot in his stomach. "Are you awake?" Kara's voice came from above, soft in the darkness. "Yeah." Ryan heard the rustle of sheets as she shifted. "It is strange," she said. "To think that our paths were crossed long before we met. The same monster cast a shadow over both of us. It makes me want to burn the whole galaxy down," Ryan admitted. "That is not freedom. Ryan, that is just revenge. Revenge is a circle. Freedom is a line. It moves forward." Ryan sighed, turning onto his side. "I do not know if I am built for the high road. Kyera, I just want them to pay." "They will," she said. "But we will make them pay with the truth, not just blood." Silence settled between them again, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy with shared understanding. Ryan reached up, slipping his hand through the gap between the bunk and the wall, letting it rest on the edge of her mattress. A moment later, her hand came down, her fingers, cool and slender, found his. They interlaced in the dark. The touch was electric. Ryan felt that same golden warmth seep into his arm, quieting the rage, soothing the ache. He squeezed her hand, a silent message of presence. "I am here. I am with you." Kara squeezed back. They fell asleep like that, holding hands in the dark, 2 broken pieces of the universe finding a way to fit together. The gas giant loomed in the viewport like a bruised eye the size of a solar system. It was a swirling, chaotic masterpiece of violent storms. Bands of crushed velvet purple, methane yellow, and deep, bruising indigo. The Wayfarer shuddered as it hit the upper atmosphere, the turbulence rattling every loose bolt in the cockpit. "You are sure about these coordinates?" Ryan Cole asked, fighting the yoke as the ship bucked against a jet stream that clocked in at 400 kilometers per hour. "Because down there looks like a very crushed, very high-pressure death." Kara sat beside him, her eyes closed, her hand resting lightly on the dashboard. She was not reading the sensors. She was feeling the location. "Trust the flow, Ryan," she murmured, her skin pulsing with a steady, rhythmic light that seemed to counter the chaotic flashing of the proximity alarms. "Go lower, into the third cloud layer." Ryan gritted his teeth and pushed the nose down. The ship screamed as it dove into the soup. Visibility dropped to 0. The shields flared white-hot as they friction burned through the dense atmosphere. Then, they broke through. Ryan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Beneath the storm layer, in a pocket of unnatural calm stabilized by gravity-dampening projectors, floated the refuge. It was not a station of metal and rivets like the ones Ryan was used to. It was a collection of crystalline spires and organic flowing platforms that seemed to grow out of the clouds themselves. Bridges made of shimmering hard light connected the structures, and the entire city pulsed with a soft, bioluminescent heartbeat that matched Kara's own. "It is beautiful," Ryan admitted, his voice quiet. "It is sanctum," Kara said, opening her eyes. "One of the last places my people can breathe." Ryan maneuvered the Wayfarer toward a docking arm that looked more like a giant orchid petal than a landing pad. As he set the ship down, the landing gear hissed against a surface that felt slightly yielding, absorbing the impact with grace. They disembarked into an airlock that smelled not of recycled air and ozone, but of rain and ozone-charged flowers. Ryan felt instantly underdressed in his scuffed flight jacket and grease-stained cargo pants. He checked his blaster holster, a nervous tick. "You might want to relax," Kara said, watching him. "You look like a piece of uncarved stone trying to walk." "I am not used to places that do not look like they were built by the lowest bidder," Ryan muttered, rolling his shoulders. "And I am not used to meeting royalty." "I told you, we do not use titles," she corrected him, but there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "Just be yourself, or perhaps a slightly more polite version of yourself." The airlock cycled open, dissolving into a mist. A delegation was waiting for them. There were 6 Lirathi, tall and slender, wearing robes that seemed to be woven from spider silk and moonlight. Their skin tones ranged from pale violet to deep midnight blue, and their markings swirled with curiosity and caution. At the center stood an older Lirathi woman, her skin the color of twilight, her eyes sharp and ancient. This was Elder Ilara. Kara stepped forward and the formality of the moment dissolved. She did not bow. She simply walked into Ilara's space, and the 2 women pressed their foreheads together, closing their eyes. Their hands clasped each other's shoulders, and a visible wave of light passed between them. A silent exchange of grief, relief, and information that happened in a heartbeat. Ryan stood awkwardly by the door, feeling like an intruder in a private temple. He shifted his weight, unsure if he should salute, wave, or just stay very still. Ilara pulled back from Kara, her eyes wet with silver tears. Then, she turned her gaze to Ryan. The intensity of her stare was like a physical weight. She stepped toward him, moving with that unnerving, gliding grace. "So," Ilara said, her voice sounding like wind through dry chimes, "this is the variable, The human who disrupts chains. Rian cleared his throat. Ryan Cole, ma'am. Just a pilot. Ilara ignored his outstretched hand. She stepped into his personal space, just as Kara had done on the station, but without the familiarity. She reached up and placed her fingertips on his temples. Rian flinched, his hand twitching toward his blaster before he forced himself to freeze. "Be still," Kara whispered from behind him. "It is a greeting. She is reading your intent." Ilara's fingers were cool. Rian felt a strange sensation, like a cool breeze blowing through the back of his mind, rifling through his surface thoughts, his nervousness, his protectiveness over Kara, his exhaustion. "He has much shadow in him," Ilara murmured, dropping her hands. "Pain, anger, but the core is solid. He is resonant." She smiled then, a small, terrifyingly perceptive expression. "Welcome to Sanctum, Ryan Cole. You have brought our daughter home. For that, you have our breath." She leaned in and exhaled softly against his cheek. Rian stood rigid, face turning a bright, embarrassed red, while the other Lirathi moved around him, touching his arms or brushing past him with a fluidity that made him feel like a clumsy giant. "Is everyone here this hands-on?" Ryan whispered to Kara as they began to walk toward the central spire. Kara smirked, linking her arm through his to guide him. "We are a tactile species, Rian. We do not fear connection. Try to enjoy it. It will lower your blood pressure." "My blood pressure is fine," Rian lied. His heart hammering as a young Lirathi male brushed a hand over his jacket sleeve with a look of pure sensory curiosity. They were led to the heart of the refuge, a laboratory grown from living crystal. The walls were translucent, revealing the swirling storms of the gas giant outside. But the room itself was a sanctuary of calm light. The scientists were already prepping the interface. It looked nothing like the cold, sterile medical bays of human space. There were no metal tables, only a raised platform of soft, glowing moss-like material. Above it hung a cluster of organic tendrils, pulsing with a faint amber fluid. "We must begin immediately," Ilara said, her demeanor shifting from welcoming to urgent. "The data in Kara's lattice is degrading. If we do not extract it now, the encryption will collapse and the information will be lost." Kara nodded. She removed her outer cloak, revealing the intricate, glowing map of her nervous system on her bare arms and back. She looked at Ryan. "Stay," she said. "I am not going anywhere," Ryan promised, taking a position by the transparent barrier that separated the observation deck from the sterile field. Kara lay down on the platform. The scientists moved their hands over controls that looked like floating stones. The organic tendrils descended, moving like underwater vipers. Rian watched, his stomach tightening. The tendrils did not just touch her, they burrowed. They sought out the neural ports at the base of her skull and along her spine. As they connected, Kara's back arched, her bioluminescence flared violent white, and a sound escaped her throat, a low, ragged cry of pain that she tried to suppress. Rian stepped forward, his hand slapping against the barrier. "Is it supposed to hurt?" he demanded, his voice echoing in the chamber. "It is necessary," Ilara said without looking up, her eyes fixed on a holographic display that was beginning to populate with scrolling code. The data is woven into her pain receptors. It was the only way to hide it from helix scanners. "To extract it, we must trigger the pathways," Kara cried out again, a sharper sound this time, her hands gripping the edges of the platform until her knuckles turned white. "Stop it!" Rian shouted, slamming his fist against the glass. "You are hurting her." Kara turned her head. Her face was pale, sweat beading on her forehead, her eyes wide with agony. But she found Ryan through the glass. She locked eyes with him, She did not speak, she could not, but she projected a wave of feeling toward him. I am here. Stay. I can bear it. It was a silent command, wrapped in reassurance. Rian felt her strength wash over him, calming his panic even as his heart broke for her. He stopped hammering on the glass, pressing his palm against it instead, as if trying to hold her hand through the barrier. Just get it done, Rian growled at the scientists. Get it done fast. The air above the platform shimmered, and the extracted data began to manifest as a three-dimensional projection in the center of the room. It was a chaotic swirl of documents, video logs, and biological schematics. It is worse than we thought, one of the scientists whispered. Rian looked up at the display. The images were a horror show. Rows of Lyrathi in stasis tanks, their bodies dissected, their neural tissue harvested to create organic guidance systems for missiles. Videos of lavish parties on the council worlds where Lyrathi with dead eyes were paraded as exotic pets and pleasure slaves for the elite. But then, the data stream shifted. It began to show the history of the suppression field technology, the dampeners that Helix used to neutralize Lyrathi abilities. A map appeared, a star chart of the fringe systems, Sector 7. Rian read the tag, that is, the map zoomed in on a specific planet, a small, dusty mining colony on the edge of the Traverse. Oakhaven, Rian whispered. The name tasted like ash in his mouth. A report scrolled next to the planet, Field Test Alpha. Subject, human mining population. Objective, test efficacy of wide-area neural suppression to induce lethargy and compliance. Secondary objective, live fire test of orbital bombardment to sanitize evidence. Rian stopped breathing. The date on the file was 20 years ago. The exact day his parents died. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a gas leak. It wasn't even a raid for resources. His home, his mother, his father, his entire childhood. It was a petri dish. They had been lab rats for the weapon that was now being used to enslave Kara's people. The council had signed the order. Helix had pushed the button. Rian felt a cracking sensation in his chest, as if his ribs were splintering inward. The room seemed to tilt. The buzzing of the Lyrathi voices faded into a dull roar. Rian? Ilara's voice came from far away. He couldn't be here. He couldn't breathe. Rian turned and stumbled toward the door. He shoved it open, ignoring the startled cries of the attendants. He ran down the glowing corridor, blind to the beauty of the architecture, seeing only the burning sky of Oakhaven. He burst out onto a viewing balcony that hung precariously over the abyss of the gas giant. The wind roared here, buffered by the energy shields but still loud enough to scream into. Rian gripped the railing, his knuckles white. He leaned over, staring down into the violent, swirling madness of the storm below. He wanted to scream. He wanted to throw himself over. He wanted to fly his ship into the heart of the Helix headquarters and detonate the core. I helped them. Rian choked out. The words ripped from his throat. He had spent 10 years flying cargo, sometimes legitimate, sometimes not. He had hauled parts for Helix subsidiaries. He had moved fuel for their fleets. He had been a cog in the machine that ground his own family into dust. Footsteps approached behind him, soft, uneven. Rian did not turn. Go away. Kara. She did not go away. She moved up beside him, leaning heavily against the railing. She was trembling, her skin pale, the light in her markings dim and flickering. The extraction had drained her. It was not your fault, she said. Her voice was weak, but steel hard. I flew for them, Rian said, spitting the words into the wind. I took their credits. I bought this jacket with money from the people who murdered my mother. You survived, Kara said. That is the only thing that matters. You survived in the cracks of their empire. She reached out, taking his hand. He tried to pull away, but she held on. Look at me. Rian, he turned his head. Her silver eyes were filled with tears, but they were not for her. They were for him. They built a machine to crush us, she said fiercely. They tested it on you, and they used it on me. We are the wreckage they left behind. But wreckage can burn. Ryan, wreckage can clog the gears. Rian looked at her, and the anger inside him shifted. It didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It stopped being a weight that crushed him and became a fuel that burned hot and clean. He looked at the scar on her arm where the tendril had entered. He looked at the exhaustion in her posture. I am going to kill them, Ryan said quietly. Every single one of them. Kara moved closer. She did not just hold his hand, she stepped into his embrace. She rested her forehead against his. This time, she did not ask. She simply opened the door. Rian felt the barrier between them dissolve. It was not like the brief flashes he had felt before. This was a flood. He felt her physical pain, the ache in her spine, the stinging of her nerves. But beneath that, he felt her rage, identical to his own. He felt her fear of the cage, and he felt her overwhelming, terrified affection for the broken human pilot holding her up. The intimacy was staggering. It was more than nakedness. It was having someone inside his soul. You bought a caged alien girl to free her, she whispered, repeating the words from the auction, but the tone was entirely different now. She pulled back slightly, her face inches from his. But the offer has changed. Ryan. Rian looked at her lips, then her eyes. What is the offer? I do not just offer you asylum, she said. I do not just offer you power, I offer you this, us. She pressed her hand against his chest, over his heart. I want to wake up next to you when there are no more cages. Ryan, I want to argue with you about navigation charts when we are old. I want to bind my life to yours, not because it is politically advantageous, but because I cannot imagine a universe where I am not connected to you. Rian's breath hitched. The wind roared around them, but in the circle of her arms it was quiet. That sounds terrifying, Rian admitted, his voice shaking. Yes, she agreed, a small smile touching her lips. It is. It is the most dangerous thing we will ever do. Rian looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the alien geometry of her face, the bioluminescence that should have been strange but now felt like the only light in the world. I am a mess, Kara, he whispered. I am broken. So am I, she said. So we fit. Rian closed his eyes and leaned into her. He let the walls come down. He let himself want this. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I accept. Kara let out a soft sound, half laugh, half sob. She tilted her head, her lips parting to seal the promise, to begin the physical component of the bond that would tie them together irrevocably. Rian leaned in, his heart pounding a rhythm that matched hers perfectly. Then the sky tore apart. A scream of tortured air ripped through the atmosphere. The clouds above the refuge boiled away as a massive, dark shape descended from the upper storm. It was black, sleek, and bristling with weapons. It looked like a shark made of knives, the Void Stalker. The alarm sirens of the refuge began to wail, a dissonant, organic shriek. They found us, Rian yelled, the romantic haze shattering instantly into combat clarity. Dropships burst from the belly of the hunter vessel, streaking toward the fragile platforms of the refuge. Plasma fire rained down, shattering the crystal spires. Rian grabbed Kara, shielding her body with his own as a blast impacted the balcony railing, showering them in sparks and molten glass. Go! Ryan roared, dragging her back toward the corridor. The refuge was in chaos. The peaceful, ethereal city had turned into a slaughterhouse. Lyrathi defenders were engaging the Helix troops, using kinetic blasts and gravity manipulation. But the corporate soldiers were prepared. They carried heavy shield breakers and incendiary rounds. "We have to get to the evacuation pods," Kara shouted, pointing toward the lower levels. "The civilians are down there." They ran. Rian kept his blaster raised, firing snapshots at the black armored figures breaching the airlocks. He dropped one, then another, his movements precise and lethal. Kara fought beside him, using her psychic impact to fling enemies off the walkways into the abyss below. They reached the central plaza. A group of Lyrathi children and elders were huddled near the pod bays, pinned down by sniper fire from the upper ridges. Rian slid behind a crate of supplies, providing covering fire. "Get them to the pods." He yelled to the Lyrathi guards, "I will hold the line." He popped up, firing a suppression spread that forced the snipers to duck. The civilians scrambled into the pods. Suddenly, a deep, mechanical thrum filled the air. Rian felt the hair on his arm stand up. Beside him, Kara gasped and collapsed to her knees, clutching her head. "The field!" she screamed. "The dampener!" A tripod-like device had landed in the center of the plaza, deployed by a heavy dropship. It pulsed with a sickening gray energy. Rian watched in horror as the Lyrathi defenders faltered. Their bioluminescence flickered and died out. They fell to the ground, vomiting and seizing as their neural lattices were overloaded with static. Kara curled into a ball, screaming silently, the light in her skin turning a dull, necrotic gray. "Kara," Rian shouted. He looked at the device. It was shielded, heavy armor plating protecting the core. But it was machinery, and Rian knew machinery. He looked at the unstable plasma grenade on his belt, a souvenir from the pirates in the debris field. "Cover me!" Rian yelled to no one in particular. He broke cover. He sprinted across the open plaza, plasma bolts sizzling past his ears. He didn't weave. He didn't dodge. He ran straight for the dampener. A Helix soldier stepped in his path, raising a riot baton. Rian didn't slow down. He lowered his shoulder and slammed into the soldier with the force of a freight train, driving his elbow into the man's throat and blasting him at point-blank range without breaking stride. He reached the tripod. The gray energy field made his teeth ache, but it didn't drop him. He was human. He was dull. He was immune. He jammed the plasma grenade into the exhaust port of the generator, keyed the timer for 3 seconds, and dove away. 1, 2. The explosion was deafening. The tripod shattered, the gray field vanishing in a puff of ozone. Kara gasped, the air rushing back into her lungs. Her light flared back to life, brilliant and angry. Rian scrambled to her, hauling her up. "Can you move?" "Yes," she hissed, eyes glowing with lethal intent. The refuge groaned. The structural integrity was failing. The platform they were standing on tilted dangerously. "The pods are away!" Ilara's voice came over the local comms. "Abandon the city! It is falling to the ship!" Rian yelled. They sprinted back toward the docking arm. The city was disintegrating around them. Crystal spires cracked and fell into the clouds. Fire swept through the organic walkways. They reached the airlock of the Wayfarer just as the docking arm began to detach. Rian threw Kara through the hatch and vaulted after her, slamming the seal shut. "Get us out of here," Kara yelled, strapping into the co-pilot seat. Rian threw himself into the pilot's chair. He didn't bother with pre-flight checks. He fired the emergency release bolts and slammed the throttle to maximum. The Wayfarer dropped like a stone, falling away from the crumbling refuge. Above them, the sanctum of the winds broke apart. The main spire shattered, and the city, with all its beauty and history, succumbed to gravity. It fell into the crushing dark of the gas giant, a falling star that winked out in the depths. Rian pulled back on the yoke, fighting the G-forces, rocketing the ship up and away from the destruction, blasting past the Void Stalker before the hunter ship could lock its main guns. They broke the atmosphere and punched it to FTL, leaving the grave of the Lirathi behind. Silence descended on the cockpit. Rian stared at the swirling hyperspace tunnel. His hands were shaking so hard he had to grip his knees to stop them. "We lost it," Rian whispered. "We lost the refuge." Kara unbuckled and walked over to him. She looked exhausted, battered, and grief-stricken. But she held up a small data chip in her hand, a copy of the fragment she had managed to save during the extraction. "We lost the city," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "But we have the truth." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "And we are still here." Rian covered her hand with his own. He looked at the data chip. It wasn't the whole picture, but it was enough to start a fire. "Yeah," Rian said, his voice hard. "We are still here. And now, they had nothing left to lose." The silence of deep space was usually a comfort to Ryan Cole. It was the only place where the noise of the universe couldn't reach him. But today, the silence inside the Wayfarer was heavy, suffocating, and thick with the weight of the dead. They were drifting in the shadow of a barren moon, 2 days' travel from the ruins of the refuge. The Wayfarer was no longer alone. Tethered to its airlock was a commandeered Lirathi shuttle, a sleek, organic vessel that looked like a wounded bird next to Ryan's brick of a freighter. Together they formed a desperate, pathetic flotilla. Rian stood in the cargo bay, watching the survivors. There were maybe 30 of them. Some were injured, their bioluminescence dim and flickering like dying candles. Others were simply staring at the bulkheads, hollowed out by the loss of their home. Kara sat on a crate near the airlock, a data pad in her hand. She was reviewing the casualty list. Her posture, usually so regal and fluid, was slumped. The light in her skin was a dull, flat violet, devoid of its usual pulsing vitality. She looked smaller than Ryan had ever seen her. Jax walked up beside Ryan, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that was dirtier than his fingers. "We are running on fumes, Rian," Jax said, his voice low. "The life support scrubbers are at 90% capacity. We cannot support this many people for long. And the food synthesizers are burning out trying to print nutrient paste." "I know," Rian said, not taking his eyes off Kara. "We need a port," Jax pressed. "We need to offload the refugees somewhere safe." "There is nowhere safe, Jax. You saw what happened. Helix found a hidden city inside a gas giant. There is nowhere left to hide." Jax sighed, a rattling sound in his chest. "So what is the plan? We just drift until we starve, or until the Void Stalker finds us and finishes the job?" Rian pushed off the bulkhead. "Gather the elders, and get Kara. We need to talk." 10 minutes later, the tiny galley of the Wayfarer was packed. Ryan, Jax, Kara, and 2 surviving Lirathi tacticians stood around the small metal table. The air was stale, recycling too slowly. "We have the data," one of the tacticians said, his voice weak. "The fragment Kara saved. It contains proof of the experiments, the Council's involvement, everything. But it is useless if we cannot broadcast it," the other Lirathi countered. "The refuge's transmitter is gone. The Wayfarer's comms array is not powerful enough to pierce the Helix jamming net. We are shouting into a void." Kara stared at the holographic map hovering above the table. She had not spoken since they entered the room. Her finger traced a line from their current position to the center of the sector. "We cannot run," she said softly. Her voice silenced the room. "If we run, they will hunt us down one by one. They will burn every world that gives us shelter. Then what do we do? Jax asked. We stop running, Kara said, looking up. Her silver eyes were hard, the steel returning to her spine. We go to the source. She pointed to a massive station marked in red on the map. The Council Core. The Helix Dominion's primary orbital fortress. That is the heart of the network, Kara explained. It houses the central array that links every Council world. If we plug the data directly into their core node, we can override the jamming. We can broadcast the truth to every screen, every data pad, every ship in the galaxy simultaneously. Jax choked on his coffee. You want to attack the Council Core? With what fleet? This bucket and a shuttle that has no weapons? We do not attack, Kara said. We infiltrate. Rian looked at the map. The core was a fortress. It had automated defense grids, fighter squadrons, and enough firepower to vaporize a moon. It is suicide, Rian said. We would be dust before we got within scanning range. Not if we have valid codes, Kara said. And not if we give them exactly what they want. Rian looked at her, and a dark, absurd idea began to form in the back of his mind. He let out a dry laugh. I have a plan, Rian said. It is stupid. It is reckless. And you are going to hate it. Try me, Kara said. We knock on the front door, Rian said, spreading his hands. I hail them. I tell them I am a loyal citizen who made a terrible mistake. I tell them I was kidnapped by a dangerous alien terrorist, but I managed to overpower her. And now, out of the goodness of my heart, and for a very large reward, I am returning their lost property. The room went silent. Jax stared at him, his mouth agape. You want to sell her back? Jax whispered. I want to pretend to sell her back, Rian corrected. It is the Trojan horse. They want Kara more than they want to kill me. If I offer her up, they will lower the shields to let us dock. Kara studied Ryan's face. She didn't look offended. She looked calculating. It is risky, she said, but it exploits their arrogance. They view humans as greedy and pliable. They will believe you would betray me for money. Rian felt a twinge of pain at that, but he nodded. Exactly. I play the part of the scumbag pilot. I deliver you to the containment block. And while they are gloating, Kara continued, picking up the thread, I will use the internal access port in the containment cell to upload the data virus. The fragment contains a polymorphic code. It will eat through their firewalls from the inside. Jax threw his hands up. This is insane. You are both insane. You are going to walk into the lion's den, put your head in its mouth, and hope it has a toothache. It is the only chance we have, Rian said grimly. Kara looked at the tactical display, her mind already refining the details. We will need to modify the Wayfarer's transponder to match a bounty hunter profile, she said, her voice picking up speed. And Rian, you will need to look convincing. You cannot look like a partner. You have to look like a captor. I can scowl, Rian offered. I have a very convincing scowl. And the handcuffs, Kara asked, a hint of dry humor touching her lips. I have a pair of mag cuffs in the locker, Ryan said. I usually use them to secure cargo crates, but they should fit. Jax looked between them, shaking his head. I am going to prep the engines. If we are going to die, I want the ship to at least look presentable. The preparations took 6 hours. The shuttle Aegis would detach and hide in the asteroid belt near the core, waiting for the signal to pick up the survivors once the chaos started. The Wayfarer would go in alone. Rian was in the cockpit, running diagnostics on the sublight drive, when the door hissed open. Kara stepped inside. She had cleaned up, washing the soot and grime from her skin. Her hair was braided back tightly, a warrior's style. The violet light of her markings was steady now, a calm hum against the darkness of the cockpit. She hit the door lock panel, sealing them in. Rian turned his chair. We launch in 20 minutes. Are you ready? No, Kara said softly. She walked over to him. The cockpit was dim, lit only by the starlight and the soft glow of the instrument panels. It felt like a confession booth. I am not ready to die. Rian, she said. Rian stood up. We are not going to die. The plan is solid. Plans fail, she said. You know this. She stepped closer, invading his space in that way she always did, making the air around him feel charged and heavy. I am not afraid of death, she continued. I have made my peace with the void, but I am afraid of dying incomplete. I am afraid of ending before I have truly chosen my own fate. She looked up at him, her silver eyes searching his face. And I am afraid of dying before I have chosen you. Rian's breath caught in his throat. Kara. You remember the offer, she said, the bond. I told you I wanted to wait until we had won, until it was safe. Yeah, Rian managed to say. I was wrong, she whispered. There is no such thing as safe. There is only now. If we walk into that fortress, we may never walk out. I do not want to face the end as your ally. I want to face it as your partner. Fully. Rian looked at her. He saw the fear in her eyes, but also the fierce, unyielding resolve. He felt his own fear rising up to meet it, the old rusted fear of letting someone in, of giving them the power to break him. If we do this, Rian started, his voice rough. If we bond, and then I lose you, it will destroy me. You know that. It will not just hurt. It will empty me out. I know, she said. It is a terrible risk. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was warm, pulsing with that strange golden energy. But Ryan, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Living in a cage of fear is not living. You told me you wanted to be free. This is what freedom looks like. It is choosing the risk. Rian looked at their joined hands. He thought about the 20 years he had spent drifting, keeping everyone at arm's length, surviving but never really being alive. He looked at the woman who had dragged him out of the dark and into the fire. He realized she was right. Not choosing was just another kind of cage. Okay, Rian whispered. Kara let out a breath, a sound of relief and longing. She stepped into him, her arms going around his neck. We will keep it open, she murmured against his ear, anchored in consent. You can pull back if it becomes too much, but I need you to let me in. I am yours, Rian said. She kissed him then, and it wasn't like the first kiss in the cargo bay. This was not a collision of adrenaline. This was a deliberate, slow dismantling of barriers. As her lips touched his, Rian felt the world tilt. The bioluminescence on her skin flared, expanding outward, wrapping around them both in a cocoon of violet and gold light. It wasn't just light, it was warmth. It was a physical pressure like sinking into a deep, warm bath. Then the walls of his mind dissolved. It didn't hurt. It felt like a door opening in a room that had been sealed for decades. He felt her. He didn't just feel her body against his, he felt her existence. He felt the cool, twin-mooned night of her childhood on Lyrath. He tasted the sweet, spiced fruit she had eaten at her graduation ceremony. He felt the cold, sharp terror of the lab, the smell of antiseptic, the feeling of needles in her spine. He felt her crushing loneliness in the cage, and the sudden, blinding spark of hope when she saw a scruffy human pilot bidding for her. And she felt him. Rian gasped as his own memories were pulled to the surface. He felt her experiencing the heat of the burning colony. She heard the scream of his mother as the roof collapsed. She felt the hollow, aching silence of the years he spent alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars, wishing he had died with them. He tried to pull back, ashamed of the darkness, but she held him tighter. No. Her voice echoed in his mind, clear as a bell. Do not hide it. I have it. I am holding it. She wrapped her psychic presence around his trauma, not fixing it, but sharing the weight. The crushing burden he had carried for 20 years suddenly felt lighter, because he was only carrying half of it. They broke apart physically, gasping for air, but the connection remained. Rian slid down the bulkhead, sitting on the floor, dragging Kara down with him. They clung to each other, sobbing. It wasn't sad crying. It was the violent, shaking release of pressure that had been building for a lifetime. Rian buried his face in her neck, breathing in the scent of rain and ozone. He felt her tears on his cheek. He felt her heartbeat in his own chest. For a long time, they just sat there, tangled together in the dark, while the wayfarer hummed around them. Slowly, the storm passed. The tears stopped. The intense, overwhelming rush of the merge settled into a steady, warm hum in the back of Ryan's mind. He pulled back to look at her. Her eyes were glowing so bright they looked like liquid mercury. Her skin was flushed. She looked wrecked, and she looked magnificent. So, Rian croaked, his voice raw. That was a lot. Kara let out a wet, shaky laugh, wiping her eyes. It is usually more gradual. We rushed the courtship phase. Rian ran his thumb over her cheekbone. I felt everything, and I felt you, she whispered. You are louder than I expected. Your mind, it shouts, hey, Ryan protested weakly. I am complex. You are chaotic, she teased, leaning her forehead against his. You are a mess of impulse and regret and stubbornness. She kissed him gently, a soft, lingering pressure that sent a shiver down his spine. And you are exactly what I need. Rian closed his eyes, savoring the feeling of her presence in his head. It was strange. He could sense her hunger. She wanted protein. He could sense a phantom ache in her left shoulder where she had been thrown against the wall during the escape. Is this permanent? Rian asked, hearing your stomach grumble. Yes. She smiled against his lips. Side effects may include shared cravings, emotional echoes, and the inability to lie to me ever again. That is terrifying. It is honest. Rian pulled her closer. I can do honest. He looked at the chronometer on the dash. We have 10 minutes. Kara sighed, the playfulness fading into solemnity. She stood up, offering him a hand. Then let us make them count. Help me with the cuffs. Partner. The wayfarer dropped out of warp on the edge of the helix system. The council core hung in space like a metal spiderweb, a sprawling complex of docking rings, defense platforms, and the massive central spire that housed the primary array. It was ugly, industrial, and radiated power. Rian sat in the pilot's seat. He felt calm, unnaturally calm. He knew it was partially Kara's influence bleeding through the bond, steadying his hands. He opened the channel. Council control. This is the freighter Wayfarer. Transponder code Delta 94. I have a priority delivery for Director Kalen. There was a pause, a burst of static. Then a cold, synthesized voice replied, Wayfarer, you are entering a restricted zone. Power down and prepare to be vaporized. Whoa! Hold fire! Ryan shouted, injecting a perfect amount of greedy panic into his voice. I am not here to fight. I have the asset. I have the Lirathi female. Another pause. Longer this time. Repeat transmission. I have Kara Lear Keth, Rian said. She is in my brig. I am bringing her home. And I expect the reward to be substantial. Stand by. Rian glanced back at the airlock. He couldn't see Kara. She was in the holding cell, but he could feel her. She was terrified. Her heart was racing. But beneath the fear was a glacier of cold, hard focus. I am ready, she projected to him. I know, Rian thought back. Just breathe. Wayfarer, the voice returned. Your bioscans confirm a Larathi life sign. Proceed to docking bay 7. Do not deviate from the flight path. If you twitch, we will turn you into debris. Understood? Rian said. He guided the ship toward the massive station. The metal hull of the fortress swallowed the viewport. It was the antithesis of the organic refuge they had lost. This place was built to cage things. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy metallic thud. Rian stood up. He smoothed his jacket. He checked the blaster he wasn't allowed to use. He walked to the brig. Kara was sitting on the bench, her wrists locked in the magnetic cuffs. She looked up at him. Time to act, she whispered. Rian grabbed her arm, roughly hauling her up. He hated the way it felt. He hated the way she flinched, even though he knew it was part of the performance. Move, he growled, pushing her toward the airlock. They marched down the ramp. A squad of Helix security troops was waiting, weapons trained on them. Behind them stood a severe-looking woman in a corporate suit, an executive Rian recognized from the news feeds. Administrator Vane. Well, Vane said, looking down her nose at Rian. The prodigal pilot returns. I am just a businessman, Rian said, shoving Kara forward so she stumbled. She is your problem now. I just want my credits. Vane looked at Kara. She walked up and grabbed Kara's chin, forcing her to look up. Kara glared, her eyes burning with hate, but she stayed silent. Take her to the containment block. Vane ordered the guards. Level 5 security on full dampeners. 2 guards grabbed Kara's arms. Rian felt a spike of panic from her, sharp and acrid as they pulled her away. Go, she told him. Focus. Wait, Rian said. My payment? Vane smiled, a thin, cruel expression. Come with me, Mr. Cole. The council wishes to speak with you personally. Rian was separated from Kara. He watched her disappear down a sterile white corridor. The bond stretched, thinner and thinner, but it didn't break. He could still feel her, a faint hum of presence in the back of his mind. He was led in the opposite direction, up a turbo lift to the spire's apex. They brought him into a boardroom that overlooked the curvature of the planet below. It was opulent, sleek, and reeked of wealth. At the head of the table sat Director Kalen, the man who had ordered the destruction of the refuge. Ah, Mr. Cole, Kalen said, not bothering to stand. Please, sit. Rian remained standing. I prefer to stand. Where is my money? Kalen chuckled. Direct. I like that. He pressed a button on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing a bank account with a staggering number of zeros. 50 million credits, Kalen said. Enough to buy your own moon. Enough to disappear forever. Rian looked at the number. It was more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. It was freedom, the kind of freedom he had thought he wanted. There is a condition. Of course, Kalen said smoothly. Of course, Rian said. We need a narrative. Mr. Cole, the public is unsettled by the rumors of the Larathi purge. We need a hero, a human hero who saw the threat of the alien terrorists and did the right thing. Kalen stood up and walked to the window. You will stand before the cameras. You will testify that Kara Lear Keth brainwashed you, that she admitted to planning attacks on human colonies. You will denounce her and her people as an existential threat to humanity. Rian stared at him. You want me to lie. I want you to secure peace, Kalen corrected. And in exchange, you get everything you ever wanted, a fresh start, a life of luxury, no more running, no more looking over your shoulder. The room was silent. The offer hung in the air. It was the survival instinct's dream. Just say the words. Just sign the paper. Walk away. Rian closed his eyes for a second. He reached out with his mind. He felt Kara. She was in the cell now. She was strapped to a chair. She was plugging the data spike into the port hidden under her fingernail. She was terrified. She knew what Ryan was being offered. Take it, she whispered in his mind. Ryan, if you have to. Take it. Survive. She was ready to die for him. She was ready to let him sell her out if it meant he lived. Rian opened his eyes. He looked at Kaylin. He looked at the money. He thought about the bond. He thought about the feeling of being whole for the first time in his life. He thought about the offer Kara had made him. Not money, not safety, but a life of meaning, a life of connection. He laughed. It started as a chuckle and grew into a loud, barking laugh that echoed in the quiet room. Something funny. Mr. Cole? Kaylin asked, his smile fading. Yeah, Rian said, wiping his eye. It is just the irony. He stepped forward, leaning his hands on the polished table. You think you are offering me something I cannot refuse, Ryan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Money. Safety. A cage with gold bars. He shook his head. But you are too late, Director. I already accepted a better offer. Kaylin frowned. What offer? Rian grinned, and it was a feral, wolfish grin. The truth. Rian slammed his hand onto the table, not on the button, but on the hidden comms link he had kept open to the Wayfarer's systems. Now. Kara, Ryan shouted, down in the containment block. Kara slammed her hand into the interface. The virus unleashed. The lights in the boardroom turned red. The holographic display flickered and died, replaced by a scrolling wall of Lirathi code. Alarms began to scream throughout the station. What have you done? Kaylin roared, backing away. I quit, Rian said. The door to the boardroom hissed open, but it wasn't security. It was chaos. Systems were misfiring. Drones were spinning out of control. Rian grabbed the heavy chair he was supposed to sit in and hurled it through the viewport's inner glass pane. It shattered, spiderwebbing the outer transparasteel. Kaylin screamed as the pressure drop popped his ears. Rian turned and ran. Run, he projected to Kara. Meet me at the spire. I am coming. Her voice roared back in his head, fierce and alive. The network is opening. The broadcast is queuing. Rian sprinted into the corridor, drawing his blaster. The game was over. The war had begun. The Helix Dominion fortress was screaming. It was a sound composed of 1,000 individual failures, alarm klaxons bleeding into one another. The groan of repulsor lifts grinding against their tracks, and the electrical shriek of shorting conduits. The virus Rian and Kara had unleashed was not subtle. It was a digital wildfire, eating through the station's logic centers with ravenous speed. Rian Cole sprinted down the executive corridor, his boots slamming against the polished deck. The air was filled with smoke and the strobe light flicker of emergency LEDs. Left at the junction. Kara's voice echoed in his mind. The security grid is rebooting. You have 8 seconds before the blast doors seal. Rian did not question the voice. He didn't check a map. He simply threw his weight into a sharp left turn, his shoulder checking the bulkhead as a heavy blast door slammed shut inches behind his heels. Nice, Rian projected back, the thought breathless and jagged. How are you doing? Busy, was her strained reply. In the depths of the containment block, Kara Lear Keth was indeed busy. The virus had struck the suppression grid first. The agonizing, heavy blanket of static that dampened her abilities flickered and died. For a Lirathi, the return of their psychic sense was like taking a first breath of air after drowning. The containment field around her chair vanished. Kara opened her eyes. They were not just silver anymore, they were blazing with white-hot intensity. Two guards stood by the door, fumbling with the manual override on the lock. They turned as the field dropped, raising their stun batons. Kara did not stand up. She flowed. She launched herself from the chair, her body twisting in midair. She didn't strike them with fists. She struck them with momentum and mind. As she landed between them, she released a focused pulse of kinetic energy. It was a precise, localized shockwave. The guards were thrown backward as if hit by a freight train, slamming into the far wall with a bone-jarring crunch. Kara landed in a crouch, her bare feet gripping the cold metal. More guards poured into the corridor, shouting orders. She moved to meet them. It was a dance of violence, fluid and terrifyingly beautiful. She ducked under a swinging rifle, her glowing hand sweeping out to touch the attacker's chest. A jolt of bioelectric feedback overloaded his nervous system, dropping him instantly. She spun, using his falling body as a shield against a stun bolt, then leaped up the wall, pushing off the ceiling to land behind the second wave. "I am clear of the cell," she sent to Ryan, heading to the core. "I am almost there," Ryan replied. "Just a few obstacles." Ryan slid to a halt. He was in the atrium outside the tribunal chamber. The path to the central hub lay directly ahead, but it was blocked. A squadron of automated security drones hovered in the air, their sensors sweeping the room. Behind them, a group of high-ranking council officials were cowering, guarded by a phalanx of heavy troopers. "Stop him!" one of the officials shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at Ryan. The drones swiveled, targeting lasers painting Ryan's chest with red dots. Ryan ducked behind a marble pillar just as the air filled with plasma fire. Chips of stone rained down on his head. "I am pinned," Ryan thought, panic spiking. "I need a distraction. Improvise." Kara's voice came back, calm and amused. Ryan looked at the console next to him. It was the control node for the atrium's holographic display system, usually used to project giant, flattering images of counselors during speeches. Ryan grinned. He ripped the panel cover off and jammed his datapad into the port. "Let us see how you like a crowd," Ryan muttered. He bypassed the safeties and overloaded the projection matrix, feeding it a loop of the security footage he had recorded during the escape. The atrium erupted in light. Suddenly, there was not one Ryan Cole. There were 50. Holographic ghosts flickered into existence, running in every direction. Some were Ryan, some were Kara, 10 feet tall and glowing like a supernova. Some were just glitching, distorted monsters of light and noise. The drones panicked. Their logic processors could not distinguish the real target from the phantoms. They spun wildly, firing at the illusions. Plasma bolts passed harmlessly through the holograms, scorching the walls and the ceiling. The council officials screamed as a giant. Flickering Kara seemed to lunge at them, her holographic hand passing through the lead official's chest. They scrambled over each other, fleeing in terror from the ghosts. Ryan laughed, a short, sharp bark of triumph. "Sorry," Ryan yelled at the chaos. "Glitch in the system." He broke cover, sprinting through the confusion. A drone swiveled toward him, but he was just another blur in a room full of blurs. He dove through the maintenance hatch at the far end of the atrium and rolled into the access tunnel leading to the hub. They converged on the gantry overlooking the central hub. It was a cavernous space, a vertical shaft that ran the length of the station. In the center, suspended by magnetic fields, was the primary array. It was a massive, pulsing crystalline metal structure, humming with the power of 1,000 worlds. Thick data conduits glowed blue and white, feeding information into the galactic network. Rian burst onto the walkway from the south. Kara appeared from the north. She looked wild. Her uniform was torn, her hair loose and floating in the static charged air. Her skin was glowing so brightly it was hard to look at her directly. Ryan ran to her. He didn't say a word. He just grabbed her, checking her for injuries. "I am fine," she said, breathless. "But we have very little time. Helix is rerouting power. They will purge the virus in minutes. We need to upload the data now," Rian said, looking at the console near the railing. Kara looked at the console, then at the massive array suspended in the void before them. She shook her head. "The console is locked out," she said. "The virus opened the door, but the bandwidth is throttled. If we upload through the standard port, it will take hours. We will be dead long before it finishes." Rian stared at her. "So what do we do?" Kara walked to the edge of the railing. She looked at the array. The hum of the machine seemed to call to her, vibrating in harmony with her own bioluminescence. "I have to interface directly," she said softly. Rian followed her gaze. "You mean, jump onto that thing?" "I mean, I have to plug myself into the main conduit," she said, turning to face him. "My nervous system is a biological transmitter. If I bridge the connection with my own body, I can bypass the throttle. I can push the full, unaltered truth out in a single burst." Rian felt a cold dread wash over him. He grabbed her shoulders. "Kara, that is a stellar-class transmitter. It pushes enough energy to broadcast across the quadrant. If you plug your brain into that, it will burn me out." She finished for him. Her voice was steady, too steady. "It will likely kill me, Ryan, or leave me a husk." "No," Ryan said. He stepped back, shaking his head. "No. We find another way." "There is no other way," she cried, the intensity of her emotion bleeding into the bond, hitting Ryan like a physical blow. "Look at the readouts. They are isolating the station. If we do not broadcast now, the truth dies here with us." "Then let it die," Rian shouted, his voice cracking. "I do not care about the truth. I care about you." He grabbed her again, pulling her close, as if he could physically shield her from her own decision. "I am not doing this again. Kara, I am not watching my family die for a corporate bottom line. I am not watching the person I love sacrifice herself for a galaxy that does not give a damn." Kara broke his grip, stepping back. Her eyes were blazing with tears. "If we only survive." "Rian, then nothing changes," she argued, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "If we run away now, the cages will still exist. Other children will be taken. Other families will be burned." She stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "You asked me what the offer was. You asked me what I wanted. I want our love to mean something. I want it to be a force that breaks things. Rian, not just a shelter where we hide." Rian stared at her. He felt her conviction through the bond. It was pure, it was noble, and it terrified him beyond measure. "Meaning does not require martyrdom," Rian whispered, tears spilling onto his cheeks. "You told me freedom meant choosing your own life. If you let them turn you into a fuse, if you become just another tool to be used and discarded, that is not freedom. Kara, that is just another kind of slavery." Their desires clashed in the space between them, her drive to give everything for the future, and his desperate, selfish, human refusal to lose the only thing that made the present bearable. Kara let out a sob. She reached up and cupped his face. "I am sorry," she whispered. She kissed him. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a desperate collision. She poured everything into it, her love, her fear, her apology. through the bond. Rian felt the tangles of her thoughts, the ache of her heart. He felt her saying goodbye. She pulled away, turning toward the railing. She prepared to vault over to the conduit. Rian moved faster. He lunged, not to stop her, but to catch her hand. He spun her around, slamming her back against the railing, pinning her there with his body. "You are not going alone," Rian said, his voice fierce. "Ryan, no!" He cut her off. "You said we are partners. You said we share everything. Well, we are sharing this." He looked at the massive array, then back at her. "You are the transmitter," Rian said, his mind racing, improvising on the edge of oblivion. "But I can be the ground, the anchor." "What?" Kara stared at him. "We interface together," Rian said. "We open the bond wide, complete integration. You channel the data, and I take the backlash. We split the load. It will kill us both," Kara whispered. "Or it will save us both," Rian said. "But I am not letting you go. Not now. Not ever." He held out his hand. "No more cages, Kara. No more solitary sacrifices. We do this together, or we do not do it at all." Kara looked at his hand. She looked at the scar on his jaw. She felt the iron resolve in his mind, a stubbornness that matched her own. She realized in that moment that he would not let her leave him behind. He would burn with her rather than live without her. She took his hand. "Together," she whispered. They climbed over the railing. The jump to the maintenance platform of the array was short, but it felt like crossing an ocean. They landed on the grating next to the main bioconduit. The air hummed with lethal power. Kara placed her hand on the interface panel. The organic surface rippled, recognizing her Lirathi DNA. Rian stood beside her. He took her other hand, interlacing their fingers. "Ready?" he asked. Kara nodded. "Now." She plunged her free hand into the conduit. The world turned white. The connection was immediate and absolute. The array roared, sucking the data from Kara's neural lattice. Rian felt the surge hit her like a lightning bolt. It was agony. It was fire running through her veins. He squeezed her hand and threw the doors of his mind open. "Give it to me." He screamed through the bond. The energy flooded into him. It seared his nerves, blinding him, deafening him. But he held on. He became the capacitor for her overflow. And then, the broadcast began. It wasn't just data. It wasn't just files and videos because they were bonded, because they were linked. The machine took everything, across the galaxy, on every council screen, on every data pad in the fringe, on the massive billboards of the core worlds. The truth appeared. They saw the labs. They saw the dissections. They saw the spreadsheets ordering the destruction of Oakhaven. But they also saw the feeling. The galaxy felt Kara's terror in the cage. They felt Ryan's grief for his parents. They felt the moment in the cargo bay when two enemies became allies. They felt the warmth of the bond, the impossible, defying love between a human pilot and an alien weapon. It was a broadcast of raw, unfiltered empathy. It stripped the politics away and left only the human and Lirathi cost. Rian felt his heart stuttering. The feedback was too much. His vision was tunneling. "Rian." Kara's voice was a lifeline in the storm. "Hold on. I am here," he thought, though his mind was fragmenting. "I am with you." The array began to whine, a high-pitched keen that shattered the glass in the hub. The overload alarm screamed. The last thing Rian saw was Kara's face, wreathed in blinding golden light, her eyes wide with love and terror. Then the conduits exploded. The shockwave blasted them backward. The world dissolved into fire and darkness. Beeping, annoying, rhythmic beeping. Rian Cole frowned. He tried to swat the noise away, but his arm felt like it weighed 1,000 kilos. He opened his eyes. White ceiling, Soft light, the smell of antiseptic but not the sharp chemical smell of Helix Labs. This smelled like lemon and clean linen. He gasped, sitting up too fast. The room spun. Pain shot through every nerve ending in his body, a phantom echo of the lightning. Kara, he croaked. He reached out with his mind, panic clawing at his throat. He searched for the warmth, for the light in the dark. It was faint. It was like a singular ember in a pile of ash. But it was there. I am here. A weak, whispery thought brushed against his mind. Rian slumped back, tears of relief pricking his eyes. He turned his head. She was in the bed next to him. She looked terrible. Her skin was pale gray, the bioluminescence dim and flickering like a dying bulb. Bandages covered her arms and chest, but her silver eyes were open, watching him. "You look like hell," Ryan whispered, his voice cracking. "You look worse," she whispered back, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. Ryan swung his legs out of bed. His knees buckled, but he caught himself on the edge of her mattress. He sank down onto the chair beside her, taking her hand. Her fingers were cold, but they curled around his weak grasp. "Did we?" Ryan started. Kara nodded slightly toward the screen mounted on the wall. Ryan looked up. The newsfeed was chaotic. The Chiron scrolling at the bottom read, "Council emergency session declared. Helix executives detained. Riots in Sector 4. The screen showed footage of a massive protest on a core world. People, humans and aliens alike, were holding signs. Some of the signs had crude drawings of a violet hand clasping a human one. "We broke it," Kara whispered. "We broke the silence." Rian looked at the screen, then back at her. He reached out and traced the line of a new scar on her forehead. "We nearly broke ourselves," he said. "That was a terrible idea." "It was the only idea," she corrected him. She squeezed his hand. "We survived. Ryan, we are alive." Rian laughed, a wet, shaky sound. "Yeah, we are." He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. The contact was grounding. The bond hummed between them, damaged but healing, a steady baseline of presence that filled the empty spaces in his soul. 3 weeks later. The station was a neutral outpost on the edge of the Traverse, run by a coalition of independent guilds. It was safe. For now. Rian stood on a small balcony overlooking the docking ring. The stars were bright and cold, indifferent to the revolutions happening beneath them. Kara stepped out to join him. She was moving better now, the color returning to her skin. Her bioluminescence was steady again, a soft violet aura against the starlight. She leaned on the railing beside him. "The High Council has sent a formal request for me to return to Lyrath," she said. "They want me to lead the reconstruction effort. They want me to be a voice for the new treaty." Rian nodded, staring out at the void. "That makes sense. You are a hero now, the face of the movement. They also asked about you," she added. "They called you the consort of the flame." Ryan snorted. "Consort? That sounds like a fancy word for luggage." "It is a title of high honor," she teased, bumping his shoulder with hers. Rian turned to look at her. "What are we going to do, Kara? Really?" She looked out at the ships docking and departing. "There is much work to be done," she said. "My people need homes. There are still other species in cages, other corporations that need dismantling. The galaxy is messy. Rian, it is going to be uncertain for a long time." Rian nodded. "Messy is good. I am used to messy." He turned his back to the stars, leaning against the railing to face her. "You know," he said, crossing his arms, "back in the station, you talked about the offer. You said you offered power and partnership." Kara smiled softly. I did. But that is not what you really wanted, was it? No, she admitted. I wanted someone to see me. Not as a weapon. Not as an asset. Not even as a leader. Just Kara. I wanted someone to choose me. Rian reached out and took her hand, pulling her into the space between his feet. I choose you, he said. Every time. And you? She asked, her silver eyes searching his. What was the offer you could not refuse? Rian looked at her, at the light in her skin, the intelligence in her eyes, the fierce, terrifying love that flowed through the bond they shared. I stopped running, Rian said quietly. That was the offer. You gave me a reason to stop running from the past and start living in the present. You gave me a home. Kara. And it is not a place. It is you. She let out a soft breath and leaned into him, resting her head on his chest. They stood there for a long time, just holding each other in the low gravity, floating in the quiet space between heartbeats. They talked about the future, not the grand political strategies, but the small things. I want to try cooking, Rian said. Real food, not nutrient paste. I would like that, Kara murmured. As long as it does not involve dead flowers, I promise. No dead flowers, just slow mornings, coffee, arguments about navigation charts, and rebuilding the galaxy, she added. And rebuilding the galaxy, he agreed. The final image was one of departure. The wayfarer sat in the docking cradle. It looked different. The hull had been patched and repainted. On the side, painted in luminescent paint that glowed in the dark of space, was a new symbol. It was a fusion of the Larathi glyph for union and the human symbol for flight. Rian sat in the pilot's seat, running the pre-flight sequence. Thrusters green, reactor at 100%, shields online. Kara sat in the co-pilot's seat. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. Her hands moved across the nav computer with practiced ease. Coordinates set, she said. The outer rim. We have reports of a black sun facility operating off the books. Rian grinned. His hand moved to the throttle. Ready? Partner? He asked. Kara looked at him. Her markings flared with a brilliant golden warmth. She reached across the console and took his hand. Always, she said. Rian punched the throttle. The Wayfarer fired its main engines, a brilliant streak of blue fire against the black. It didn't run. It didn't hide. It flew straight into the unknown, carrying two souls who had found freedom in a cage and a future in each other. They were flying into a horizon that was dangerous, uncertain, and absolutely wide open. And for the first time in history, they were flying together,